Hey, welcome to This Week at Work Hard. We're on episode 5, so there's 4 more episodes you can go watch. That's what that means. I'm Ryan Haggerty, Director of Workforce Development, and this is...
Josh Lucas, Executive Committee.
Yeah, so being Workforce Development, I'm going to kick off today talking a little bit about that. So you've probably heard from us that these primary contractor agreements are going to be a thing, and they are for real, going to be a thing coming up next week. So just some highlights to point out there. These are obviously what the freelancers that work with our Work Hard Digital and our Academy entities are signing off on. So we've updated the rates in there. Josh talked a little bit about how we came to those numbers last week. We also included a likeness release as well as some information about how we collect data to share with our funders so we can keep doing the awesome things that we do. And then we also tried to simplify the language and the terms because contracts are dense. There are a lot of words in there. Anything else about those PCAs? I mean, why is that important that people get all this information?
Well, just generally, we want to have clear expectations set between the folks that we hire to do the work and vice versa, right? They need to know what we're promising and how we organize the activity. So I think the only thing we left out there is we want those all back by May 1st.
Yes. So you should be seeing that email coming out early on next week. And as I've been recommending, if you are currently working with us and you know a project manager, you can reach out to one of us and maybe ask some basic questions. But certainly being a legal contract, if you have a lawyer, you should probably talk to them as well if you have really specific questions. But speaking of workers, we've had the retail space and Southside Works has been running since January now.
More like February, but yeah, it's been
February, January. Lots of things going on there. I mean, what's it look like down there now? Space wise, staff wise, what kind of things are going on?
Yeah, so Baron Batch, the artist, uses that retail space for his gallery. He contracts Work Hard Pittsburgh to be operations and back office sort of business development for the art products that he produces. That retail space is about 3,500 square feet. I think we have about 8 people on call that pick up part-time work, which is essentially, acting as the retail employee of that facility. And then in the background, there is essentially a gallery manager position / customer liaison for Baron Batch's business that works in the back room to get items shipped out and engage with customers and things like that. It's a great experiment for us, right? It's the first time we're doing staffing for retail. We do a lot of staffing for technical projects and tech adjacent projects, obviously. So this was a chance for us to kind of branch off into a new business direction while working with a great artist who has deep networks and, affords us the opportunity to get some national press too, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I probably didn't mention this at the beginning of this segment, but it's called the Residency down there. So if you've seen that, that's on the website, the social, you can find out more information there. But the other thing is, it pays a really great rate. We're always interested in people that are coming through there that want to engage in that kind of work. And some things to look forward to is people are getting, vaccines and are able to get out and have a little bit more freedom with what they do. That is going to be a space to have various kinds of events and things that'll be coming up on the calendar too. So in addition to art, people from around the world visiting that space, Baron being able to showcase what he does and people pick up some retail work. Also going to be some events and other exciting things happening as we all get out of our caves. So definitely looking forward to that. And then the other side of what we're involved with specifically within the Baron Batch universe, we have a large space on the second floor of 120 Milbridge. So, we've probably talked about some of the construction updates and, now that Baron's in there and he's kind of doing his thing. But I think a lot of people don't realize what that space is intended for or even what it looks like. From the outside, it looks like a big giant warehouse. So, Josh, can you tell us a little bit more about what was the intent of that space and what's happening now that it is operational?
Yeah, we acquired 120 Milbridge to essentially give us more square footage to do impactful things. And while the ultimate vision or the ultimate sort of reality of what happens in that space is really unclear, because we're in the middle of an architectural study on what's feasible based on
Yeah, and what was the original plan, and why did that get sidetracked? I know you're saying a lot of things here, but
yeah, I'm not sure that the original plan has gotten sidetracked, right? Like the original plan is still the original plan, right? Which is understand what we're allowed to do with that light industrial building, as far as like code goes, right? Accessibility, cost of building out, cost of build out, and so that's where we are, right? The architect is in the middle of a study to help us understand like what it costs to build certain kinds of usable space on that lot, in that building, above that building, to the left of that building, to the right of that building, so that we have more room to do things. Originally, like way back before COVID, right? The intent was to rehab that space so that it could be multifunctional office space, much like 744 East Warrington Avenue is.
and then why was it not a good idea to cram a lot of people into a building?
Yeah, there's that. There's that, but there's also just the economic reality of it, right? Like co-working and month-to-month office leases in the city took about a 60-70% hit on the act of doing business. And we know that because we asked some of our partners that run other co-working spaces like how it was going. So, ultimately what happens to that building is going to come down to what is cost effective and what can generate enough income to at least break even and pay for the rehab. Anything you touch in that building is going to cost, over $1 million, just because it's old, it's legacy, there's no sprinklers, there's, just a million things that need to be done to get it up to some sort of modern standard. So that's all the backstory. And now though it's being, utilized really well, right? So it has a mortgage on it from the URA that we have to pay every month. So it's really important that the rent that building generates covers that mortgage plus, because there's utilities, there's taxes, there's everything else that goes in associated with holding a commercial building, as well as just risk, right? Like somebody slips on the ice, they sue us, it costs us a ton of money to get out of that stuff. So right now there are tenants in there that do light industrial and manufacturing. The one that's the newest is Baron Batch. He's using the upstairs essentially to upscale his ability to create product. So Baron sells a lot of art, and he needs to have the space and mechanisms in place to generate more art in a shorter period of time so he can keep up with demand. Beneath Baron is a cabinet maker that we bought the building from, who's been there for, 20 years or something like that. So it's a good use of the space. It's just being all used as light industrial. It is something that is paying for itself right now. It's cash flowing positive, and will continue to do so until we take out a bunch of loans to rehab it.
No, I mean, it's a great snapshot of kind of how COVID, I mean, everybody used that word pivot, right? But how COVID presented like a clear need to pivot within the business operations and revenue generation of what that space could do. And, I mean, I've been up there and been able to see the finished product, and it is pretty amazing, like what, Lewis and Luster and everybody and all those crews did with that up there to get Barron to have a space that he could really, do widespread production and have a lot of product to sell. But also it wouldn't be a stretch to turn it into something else at this point. And it's at least stabilized so that it can have a good, healthy life for the next thing that does happen.
Yeah. If Barron decides to leave, now we have a proper 3,500, 4,000 square feet of newly floored, newly heated, newly cooled, new electrical, for the next tenant, and we'll charge market rate. It's something that we should be able to lease out much easier now because there's not $60,000 of work that needs done to that space.
And related to this conversation, we got a really great update from Ron Gatos, who's working with real estate on the RACP money, which I'm not going to remember that acronym off the top of my head, but it's related to state budget line items that our elected representatives for our area can get involved in. So without over explaining this, why is this helpful to our bottom line in terms of our real estate development and just the continued development of 120 Milbridge?
So RACP is a state grant program for economic redevelopment. It basically is grant money that needs to be matched, that's given by the state of Pennsylvania to see projects forward, often associated with a real estate project. And so Ron has done a good job of coordinating with our state and federal officials to make sure that our work on 120 Milbridge, that is the future expansion of 120 Milbridge, either into more physical space or updates in the existing space, is queued up and in the legislation so that we are a project that can get approved when that legislation gets voted on. Whenever I guess that's June, probably they do the vote when they do the budget. I'm not 100% sure.
It depends on if it's on time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so if that all works out and that we don't get struck from the budget, that's $500,000 of capital that we can then use for physical build out. And the great part about this first RACP is that our previous investments in the building will count as our matching funds. So we may have to throw a little bit in because I'm not sure that we will get to that $500,000 number exactly. But if we got to throw 30 grand in to get 500 grand, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and just it's worth noting that often when we're talking about funders, we have a lot of programmatic funding that happens. We do have some that supports maybe a little bit more loosely our operations, but it's been a while since we've really had straight up real estate funding. So this would be extremely helpful, considering the amount of money that is going into this process. Just making sure that not only the building stabilized, but that our operations here are able to stabilize as well.
Yeah, I mean, with that money, easily we could stabilize the roof. We could start thinking about solar. We could landscape and figure out what we're going to do with that bumpy yard that's out there. We could update the electrical downstairs. I mean, there's just a ton of things we could do to make that building worth more money, right?
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately it too. Like you want to have a liquid asset that you can borrow against down the road.
Mm.
So once all the loans are paid off, if that building's now worth $1.5 million or $1 million, now you can borrow 60% of that value on a commercial, just a traditional commercial loan with the bank.
Yeah. And in terms of that feasibility study, is there like a timeline to be looking forward to hear more about that, or?
I think we need to pay our bill.
So soon. Segue. All right. So that was 120 Milbridge. That space is being activated. Good things are happening. The pivot is real. So next thing I wanted to touch on is something that's actually going to be coming up in September. So we've been talking about Barrel and Flow Fest, which is the rebranding of Fresh Fest, which is an amazing brewing festival celebrating Black artists, entrepreneurs, brewers, and leaders in our region and from around the country, honestly. So with Barrel and Flow, that's all going down at Southside Works. But there also is a component that's going to happen on Friday, September 10th at a conference center over in, Doubletree, Green Tree, that's going to involve a lot of the panel talks. So if you're more interested in taking part in the conversation, that's a day you definitely want to show up for. That some of that is going to be live streamed as well. And then on Saturday, that's the big day. So that's all, people can come out, do the in-person stuff down in Southside Works. I don't know, like what kind of things have been happening when it was Fresh Fest in person that you particularly enjoyed or thought were done really well as far as events go? Josh was there in 2019. His old man brain is thinking really hard about this. 2020 was rough.
I think what Dave Bracey does really well is, he sets the stage for meaningful conversations that then have like high visibility, right? Like, so when you gather 4,000 or 5,000 people in in an area of the city, like that automatically creates a whole bunch of cultural collateral and a whole bunch of cultural conversation. And, that's so much more impactful to everybody's perceptions and everybody's ability to actualize steps towards more equity or a healthier business environment for Black business owners, or just generally like making Pittsburgh an attractive place where a diverse group of people want to live and stay and reside. So I think that's the value of Barrel and Flow Fest. Barrel and Flow Fest. Damn it. Barrel and Flow Fest.
No beer has happened at this point. This is just how we are with Mass.
That's Pittsburgh at its best. That's really like letting an accomplished artist like Day, a comedian, right? Giving him the resources to just do a thing that makes Pittsburgh awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like one of the things I hear in diversity and equity that comes up very often when people are talking about it being for real and being like something that has a lasting impact is it's not just, having diverse people present, but it being something that they genuinely feel is for them. And every year that I've been able to participate and see what's going on, like not only has Day and that organizing team done a great job of kind of setting the stage for all this to happen, but the artists that come out, the entrepreneurs that come out, the influencers that come out, the performers that come out, like everybody feels that, right? And they bring their A game to it. And not only is it a great beer fest, but it is just this cultural confluence that comes together where people can kind of celebrate what they've been up to. And have new things happen and new networking and engagements happen. And like I said, this is a national thing now, even international. Last year, they had a UK brewer when we did it all digital come on and be a part of the podcast that Day and Ed do. But it just really sets the stage for what these events should be. And being able to do it in person after we've all kind of been stuck inside for a year. I don't know. This is going to be crazy.
And also just it's an example of who should be running these events, right? Like it's who we should be empowering in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, like I've been fortunate since 2016 when I moved here. I got kind of introduced to Day and Ed through the podcast, but got to see what they did with setting up comedy shows to start with, right? Or just really starting to bring in these brewers from around the country to like sit here in our little tiny studio space in a basement on Warrington Avenue and have the CEO or whoever of New Belgium here, right? He flew in, just for a day to kind of do that with them. So it's super impressive what they've been able to put together, and the fact that it happens year after year and people keep supporting it really speaks to that. So hard turn. So that's coming up in the fall, but we are kind of gearing up for staffing, which is why I was mentioning Barrel and Flow. So if you're interested as a freelancer and working on that and you have not talked to me yet, definitely want to perk up and speak up and say you want to be a part of it. Hard turn into membership. So this is kind of tied into some diversity initiatives that we have here, but membership has done a really great job of kind of formalizing recruiting, service hour tracking, and other things. But part of our mandate that we do here in terms of the co-op ownership is we are seeking to have more representative people in terms of minorities, women, and others actually be owners of this thing. So part of that is having successful outreach, but also successful retainment of diverse members and making sure that this is a place for them too. So with that note, membership is starting to do one-on-one outreach. So this is really just kind of speaking to our diverse membership, seeing what kind of things you might be interested in. If there's things that you're curious about that you haven't been able to take part in, or if there's things that we just maybe don't offer that might be valuable to you, I think now is a great time to jump in that conversation and kind of let us know what those things are. I guess from my perspective, I'm always happy to kind of be tapped to take part in that, to help people come on as freelancers, find out more about what we do with workshops, and even just do technical things here with what we do on the production side as well. So I think we have a lot of resources to offer, but certainly, there's better ways that we can kind of hit the mark for what people are looking to do. Go ahead.
Ryan, do you ever just look in the mirror and practice smiling with your eyes?
Every day. Ever since we had to wear these. Well, okay, so here's a great segue since we're just like talking about business things. The pretzel shop. You familiar with the pretzel shop?
I am.
Yeah, cash only, real Pittsburgh place, right? They were taking orders with two different cashiers, but everyone has a mask on, so you have no idea who's talking to who, which I'm sure is a common problem in retail and restaurants right now. But we all kind of laughed it off and had our pretzels, and it was great anyways.
Did you just snitch on the pretzel shop to the IRS by saying that they're cash only?
I mean, if the IRS is watching our show, we are all in trouble. All right. But on that note, definitely go hit up the pretzel shop. They're in the South Side. They're delicious and definitely probably not extremely healthy for you, but they are a Pittsburgh staple. So I believe that's going to bring us to the end of episode 5. You're probably going to see a different host sitting up here next to Josh next week for episode 6. I'm just going to leave that as a cliffhanger for you guys to guess who that is.
I think you'll see Ryan back here in this seat intermittently. I think maybe we should start doing sort of a rolling thunder here with the membership. Have them talk about what's going on.
They can talk about their favorite pretzels. But yeah, this has been This Week at Work Hard, episode 5. You can check it out on Libsyn. Is it Spotify or SoundCloud? Spotify or YouTube. I'm Ryan Haggerty.
I'm Josh Lucas.
And we're out.